It's planting season, 1993. And at the bottom of the world, planting season means spring arrives in September. The highest grossing film in the history of movies, Jurassic Park, it's playing on every screen on Earth. And its star, the man who just outran a Tyrannosaurus Rex in front of a billion people, he's standing in a cold, wind-blown paddock in New Zealand, putting grapevines into the dirt. 5 acres, Gibbston, Central Otago. Mountain wind that comes down the gorge like it's got a grudge. And this man, who at that exact moment could have had any script, any franchise, any life he wanted, he is on his knees in the gravel, planting Pinot Noir, the one grape on earth famous for breaking hearts. His neighbors, they thought it was a hobby. And the wine trade figured it was just a vanity project. Hollywood, well, to the extent Hollywood noticed anything at all, assumed it was just a phase. It was none of those things. It was the beginning of a 33-year answer to a question mark most of us never get the chance to ask ourselves. When you already have everything, what do you build? Sam Neill, he died last month, 78 years old. And this week, I want to talk to you about what he actually left behind. Because it wasn't the dinosaurs. And I do want to talk about why. From Central Otago to a shell-cratered vineyard in southern Ukraine, planting a vine might be the most stubborn act of hope that a human being can commit. Welcome, welcome. I'm John. So 2 completely different sets of obituaries ran for the same man. So the first one, I'm sure you already saw it. It's all about Jurassic Park, the piano, the hunt for Red October, Peaky Blinders. He had 5 decades on the screen. There's even a surviving screen test from 1986 of him auditioning for James Bond. Honestly, he would have been a great Bond. After you listen to this, go on YouTube and look it up. But possibly too decent of a human being to play the part convincingly. He never stopped. A memoir in 2023, new roles into his late 70s, a knighthood for services to film. He worked the way farmers work, because the work is the life, not the interruption of it. The second set of obituaries, they ran in the wine trade press, and they read completely differently. They called him the founder of 2 paddocks. They called him one of the benchmark Pinot Noir producers of Central Otago. One trade paper put it in a way that really hit me. Many of us in the wine world knew him not as a celebrity, but as a farmer. His family said his death in Sydney was sudden and unexpected, that he died surrounded by the people he loved. And there's a little bit more to that statement. I promise I'll come back to it. So which obituary got him right? The movie star or the farmer? I don't think it's actually a competition. I think one of those careers was the job. And I think the other one, the dirt, the vines, the long wait, it was the answer to something that the job could never touch. To see why, you have to look at what he actually built, because it was not a vanity label. It wasn't even close. In 1993, when Sam Neill put those first 5 acres of vines into Gibbston, Central Otago barely registered as a wine region at all. There were a handful of true believers who had planted Pinot Noir in the 1980s in a place that every single expert said was too cold, too far south, too risky. New Zealand's entire international reputation at the time stood on one grape. It was Sauvignon Blanc, and that was grown 700 miles north in Marlborough. Planting red Burgundy's grape in a frost pocket at the bottom of the world was, by every commercial measure, an absolutely terrible idea. But he did it anyway. And his stated ambition at the start was gloriously modest. Make a good Pinot Noir his friends and family would enjoy. His assessment of the difficulty, and this is verbatim, frankly, my friends will pretty much drink anything, so this didn't seem too hard. That's the founding mission statement of one of the Southern Hemisphere's most respected estates. And you need to remember that next time the winery talks to you about its philosophy in all of its fluency, in all of its beautiful words. And then he did the thing that celebrities almost never do. He stayed. So over 3 decades, 2 paddocks grew from that first little block into 4 small vineyards across Gibbston, Alexandra, and Bannockburn, the only producer with vines in all 3 of central Otago's principal valleys. The farming, it went fully organic, certified from the 2017 vintage. In production, it was always deliberately small. Estate fruit, single vineyard bottlings the collectors now chase. And here's the part that is the best part, that he hated, absolutely hated being referred to as a celebrity winemaker. And he told an interviewer back in 2013 that people groan when they hear that a wine was made by a celebrity because they presume it must not be any good. And he knew that tag was the poison, so he ran the winery like a man with something to prove. Never any shortcuts, no nostalgia. He was famously dismissive of what he called the romance around corks, and he bottled under screw cap like any good pragmatic Kiwi. And you can see what happened around him. In the years since those first 5 estates went in, Central Otago went from a punchline to now a wine pilgrimage. The Pinots coming off that mountain country now sit on great wine lists around the world. They sit next to Burgundies that cost 5 times as much. Neill, he brought the region attention that no marketing budget could buy. And then he spent 30 years making sure that the wine deserved it. Fame opened the door, and it opened the door exactly once. The farming had to do everything after that, and it did. The reputation was earned in the glass, not borrowed from a movie poster. If you ask sommeliers about 2 paddocks, they'll talk about Alexandra fruit, they'll talk about whole cluster decisions, and they'll talk about all of that before they start mentioning a dinosaur or any movies from the 90s. But the wine, it's only half the story, because the farm, that's where he actually lived. So, if you followed him online, and during the lockdown years, a few million people did. So you know that the farm wasn't a backdrop. It was actually the main event. And one of the things that he did is that he named the animals after his famous friends. So there's a ram called Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, the man who spent 1993 outrunning a Tyrannosaurus Rex alongside Jeff Goldblum, went home to the bottom of the world and named a sheep after him. By Neill's own account, the ram would headbutt him whenever his back was turned, which suggests the name was well chosen. And there was a duck named Charlie Pickering, a rooster named Michael Fassbender, who survived a dog attack, minus a few feathers. There was a chicken named Meryl Streep, sadly taken before her time by a ferret. And a cow named Helena Bonham Carter, whose daughter, Neill was godfather to all 8 of her calves, was named Laura Dern. He did ask their permission first. Some of them got generally into this. So he said that Helena Bonham Carter always wanted to know whether she'd calved again. And the reason for all of it, as he once explained to the Times, one simply cannot really eat someone named Helena Bonham Carter. Now, he wasn't a vegetarian. He just couldn't eat anybody he bothered to name. So he named all of them. A cow, who is a national treasure, he reasoned, cannot become sausages. Now, during the strangest years of the pandemic, when the whole world was locked inside, he started posting little videos from the farm. There was no production value to any of this. There's no publicist. It's just a man and animals and a cell phone and whatever thought had crossed his mind that morning. And millions started to tune in. And it's not because he was famous. It was just because he was calm. Watching a man be genuinely content in a paddock while everything else was on fire and people were dying everywhere, well, that felt like proof the contentment still existed somewhere. And think about what that is. Hollywood is all about convincing us that fame is the destination. And here's a man who had all of it. He had the franchise, the recognition, Bond audition, and he was gently informing the world that fame ranks somewhere right around poultry. That a good life, a duck, a lake, a row of vines, and weather worth complaining about. In that last fight of his life, it wasn't for a role. So in early 2026, so earlier this year, months before he died, he released a short documentary opposing a fast-tracked industrial gold mine in central Otago. Guy's 78 years old, his final winter defending the dirt. And that choice, seasons over spotlight, ground over glamour. That was his philosophy. Because there is one thing a vineyard gives you that no film set ever will: time. Not free time, deep time. The kind that outlasts you. Which brings me to the real subject of this essay. Here's the math of a grapevine. You plant it today, you get nothing. Not this year, not next year. The first crop worth picking at all comes around year 3. The vine doesn't hit its stride until year 10 and maybe year 15. And the fruit that makes the wines that people whisper about, old vine wines, the ones that taste like a place remembering itself, that's 30 years, that's 40, 50 years. There's no other product a human being makes on that schedule. We live in a world that measures attention in seconds, and a vine that measures it in decades. Sam Neill, he lived that math himself. Vines in the ground in 1993. First 2 paddocks vintage, 1997. 4 years of farming with nothing to show for it but faith and frost damage. One of the biggest movie stars on the planet, waiting on a plant. Think about what else in human life runs on that schedule. Cathedrals, forests, children. And that's the company vineyards keep. Not products, commitments. And we've mostly stopped making commitments on that time scale. We optimize for the quarter. We measure the week. A vine looks at all that and just shrugs. Which means every vineyard is by definition a gift to someone else. No one plants a vine for themselves. You plant it for a future drinker. A stranger probably, who's going to pull a cork, or in this case, crack a screw cap, in a year that you might not be around to see it. It is the least selfish agriculture there is. Sam Neill understood this better than almost anyone because he said so. Speaking to the trade press in 2017, he called winemaking one of the arts and said his ambition was to leave behind a thing of beauty that would outlive him. A thing of beauty that would outlive him. He said that 6 years before anyone knew what was coming. In 2023, he announced he had a rare and aggressive blood cancer. And then he kept working. His memoir, written through treatment, and quite frankly, funnier than a book written under those circumstances has any right to be. New roles, the farm videos. He described chemotherapy with genuine comedy, which takes a species of courage and maybe a little bit of acting skill. And through all of that, the vineyard reports, they kept coming. The vintages kept getting made, the 2024, the 25, and then in April of this year, the announcement, cancer-free. He won. And last month he died, suddenly, unexpectedly, of something else entirely. But here's the detail his family made sure the world knew, right there in the statement announcing his death. He was still cancer-free. Their word for it was blessed. That disease never got him. He went out the way he lived the last 3 years, undefeated, and he was still farming. The 2026 harvest came off those Alexandra and Bannockburn blocks in the southern hemisphere autumn, so that was just months ago. And he was still celebrating that good news, that his cancer was gone. And right now, in the winter cold of central Otago, next year's buds are already forming on the canes. That 2027 vintage exists, microscopically, patiently, on vines he planted. He will never taste it. But notice something about the bet he placed. He placed it in peacetime, in a stable country and quiet land, the bottom of a world that mostly left him alone. Planting a vine assumes there will be a future to drink it in. So what happens when even that isn't guaranteed? The same week that the wine world was mourning Sam Neill, The Guardian ran a story that answers that particular question. In southern Ukraine, a wine grower named Mikhailo Molchanov tends his rows within range of Russian artillery. In the middle of his vineyard, there's an unexploded Russian rocket, nose down, half buried in the soil, sitting right between the rows of Chardonnay. In 10 feet away, the vines are pruned. The work continues around the thing that was sent to end it. Now, the numbers behind that image are brutal. In 2014, Ukraine had 68,000 hectares of vineyards. After Crimea was annexed, 47,000. Today, about 15,000. Many growers have torn out vines entirely and switched to wheat and sunflowers, crops that pay this year because this year is the only thing the war lets you count on. And yet, in Kherson, which is a city under regular bombardment, a winemaker named Ola Kaschenko watched as her own vineyard got destroyed. Her plan is not to quit. Her plan is to buy grapes and keep making wine, reds with strong tannins, white with good acidity, until she can go home. In her words, we plan to return, we will rebuild, and we will plant our own grapes again. Now, I know that it is very easy for a guy sitting in the comfort on the other side of the world to romanticize other people's courage. So let me just say it in this way. These growers are not making a symbolic gesture. They are making payroll. They are feeding families. They are holding a piece of their country's identity in the ground with both hands. The symbolism, it's more for us to notice, but the work is theirs. Because wheat feeds you this winter. A vine is a bet that there will be winters worth surviving for, 5, 10, 30, 50 of them. Planting one on a front line of war is something else entirely. The Guardian's writer put the perfect frame to this. To make wine, it is to believe in the future. So, to me, all of this is bigger than one man and one war. Every single bottle in your shelf, every single one, is a bet that somebody placed on a future that they could not guarantee. A farmer looked at bare dirt and gambled years of their life that the climate would hold, that the market would come, that somebody, someday, would care. The famous ones like Neill and the anonymous ones in Kherson, they're all making the same exact wager. Wine is just the receipt. And when you drink it, you're not tasting a place. You're tasting someone's confidence that you would exist, that there would be a table and people around it and something worth toasting. So, we poured a Central Otago Pinot at the bar the other week, and I told them this story, and I watched a room full of people look at the glass, and they looked at that wine just a little bit differently. That's the whole job right there. So this week, here's your homework. Open up something from somebody who planted anyway. So a Central Otago Pinot, if you could find one. 2 paddocks if your shop is lucky enough to have it. A Ukrainian wine, if your city stocks one. More of them are reaching our shores every year. It just doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to be on purpose. Because a man who could have had anything chose to leave behind a thing of beauty that would outlive him. It did. And it will. And somewhere in the frozen middle of winter at the bottom of the world, that next vintage, it's already waiting. I'm John. Thanks for being here. Go plant something.